Greetings and welcome to our viewers here on Facebook Live and to all those watching on Rogers Television. This is the Lake Simcoe Town Hall. My name is Pekka Rainio. I'm the president of the Barrie Innisfil NDP, and I'm so glad you could join us tonight with our special guests, Claire Malcolmson, Executive Director of Rescue Lake Simcoe. Hi, Claire.
Hello.
And MPP Sandy Shaw from Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, and also our Ontario NDP Environment Critic. Hi, Sandy.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, before we begin, I'd like to take a moment for an important land acknowledgement. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, it's customary to acknowledge the traditional territories and ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples. I'd like to acknowledge the sacred land on which I'm hosting our Lake Simcoe Town Hall tonight. This land has been the site for human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the ancestral land of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabe Nation. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Williams Treaty. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. And I'd like to thank the staff at the Barrie Native Friendship Center for providing me with this land acknowledgement, one that's specific to the Lake Simcoe watershed region.
Nice.
Earlier this week, we celebrated World Water Day, and for all of us viewing tonight, we have a vested interest in protecting the entire Lake Simcoe watershed. Claire, just wondering, according to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, phosphorus pollution must be dramatically reduced to prevent weeds, toxic algae blooms, and to protect the cold water fishery. Could you give us an update on the health of Lake Simcoe, and are we on track to reach phosphorus reduction goals?
Well, thanks. This is a really good framing question. Lake Simcoe is certainly healthy enough for us to swim in and fish and enjoy. And that's what we have on our side. We have lots of green space. It's a question now of whether we're going to do the right thing this year and moving forward to keep the lake as healthy as it is right now, or if the government is going to make different decisions. So the health of the lake, when you look, so there's two main things that I like to look at. One is phosphorus pollution and one is natural heritage cover. And those are forests and wetlands. So the phosphorus pollution, we're not doing that well. The Lake Simcoe Protection Plan has a target of achieving 44 tons a year of phosphorus flowing into the lake by 2045. And the current load is actually higher than it was about 10 years ago. The 10-year average is around 90 tons a year. And we had a peak load in 2017 of 131 tons a year of phosphorus. Wow. And so as Pekka said, the problem with that is that it creates algae, it creates excess weeds. So there's a lot of things that people find unpleasant about that when they're swimming or water skiing or fishing or, fouling their propeller in their motor. But ecologically, there are problems too. And that is that when the weeds break down, that process consumes oxygen. So one of the key targets of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan is having enough dissolved oxygen in the water for the cold water fish, which are really the center of our cold water fishery at Lake Simcoe and really the center of the tourism, especially in the winter for ice fishing. So we're not meeting that target. And then the natural heritage target is to have 40% of the watershed in high quality natural cover. And that's been defined by the province and mapped. And we have about 28% high quality natural cover, but only half of that. Now, we did some analysis with mapping, and only half of that is well protected by provincial policies. And until very recently, I really thought that policies that were protected in the provincial policy statement for provincially significant wetlands and provincially significant forests would actually be protected, but that is no longer necessarily the case. So it just depends how freaked out you want to be about what might happen. But I would say that the lake's health is okay, but there are really dark clouds on the horizon and we have to take those seriously or we will be in really big trouble. My final thing on that will just be that climate change is really exacerbating the problems that I have described, and that gives even more reason to work extra hard to achieve those targets.
Hey, one of the people viewing tonight sent me a question asking for the main sources of the phosphorus pollution that's entering our lake, and I wonder if you could just give us a brief overview of what are those main phosphorus sources that are going into our lake.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, it's not that intuitive. I mean, I think a lot of people know that nutrients are found in sewage. So sewage systems and septic systems make up about 10 to 14% of the phosphorus load. The sewage system load has actually been cut in half thanks to measures put in place by the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. Those are the only ones that have demonstrably come down. Other sources are overland, so that's generally just called stormwater. But what could go into stormwater is, you know, if you use fertilizer in the Lake Simcoe watershed, it could end up fouling the lake. Animal poo, but also, you know, phosphorus is naturally occurring. There's, you know, a natural load for phosphorus. It's in soils. So really the thing that people don't understand, or just because we're not taught this generally, is that when you strip a site bare for development or for farming, that soil can actually kind of become a pollutant. So it can run off the site when it rains, and it runs off a lot when there are very heavy precipitation events, which are occurring more and more for sure under climate change, which is here and now. And it can also be airborne. So in the neighborhood of 25 to 35% of the Lake Simcoe watershed's phosphorus load is atmospheric. So that is just from roads, farming, construction, aggregate sites primarily. And what have I missed? Farming definitely contributes, but it's also accounted for in the in some other measures. They measure tributary loads. Those are the main sources: sewage, farming, any time that you disturb dirt, and the atmosphere is part of that.
And you're still concerned. You see dark skies on the horizon. Hey, Sandy, I'm sure you can relate to the concerns that Claire and I have for Lake Simcoe. You're the MPP for Hamilton. You've expressed concerns for the Coots Paradise Sanctuary. What's going on there, and what can we learn in Simcoe County from the management or the mismanagement of Coots Paradise Sanctuary?
I'm glad you brought that up. Coots Paradise is in fact, the picture behind me is Coots Paradise. It really is a beautiful wetland in Hamilton, and it unfortunately there was a spill of an estimate of 24 billion liters of raw sewage went into this protected, beautiful wetland. It flowed for about 4 years before it was detected at all. It really was only detected because people that tend there, volunteer, do plantings, walk there, kayak, were reporting all kinds of sewage that they were seeing. And there was also, water keepers. 2 Indigenous women were saying, raising the alarm, and it took a long time before people paid attention to that. And, before I just talk about, what we can do to, learn from this, because this is happening, Coots Paradise is something that could happen to any of us in any of our beloved wetlands in our communities. I just would like to say that the Supreme Court today, the Chief Justice has said climate change is real. Literally used those words in his deputation, and also said that climate change poses an existential threat. And this was very specifically in response to the Ford government's challenge that the cap and trade was not constitutional. So now we have a Supreme Court judgment that says, in fact, climate change is real. And so how that connects to some of the things that Claire was talking about and Coots Paradise has to do with the kinds of extreme weather events that we're seeing, the runoff. And in Coots Paradise, really, we have a system where, unfortunately, when the system is even functioning at its best, It's designed to have, sewage will actually be bypassed into certain areas when it overflows or when there's too much for the treatment plant to handle. So the lesson here for me is a couple of things. One is that we need to understand, we need to have a new relationship with our waterways. We need to really rethink how we're using them literally as sewers, and look at ways that we can invest in good green infrastructure. I mean, municipalities need investment from the province to increase and improve their waste and wastewater management systems so that this could not happen again or could be minimized. And the other thing I would say is that, as the situation that I described, it was local citizens that loved this area that were raising the alarm. And without getting too in the weeds, funny expression to use, but, the city knew, when the city discovered this leak, they disclosed, but not in a really very public way. Mm-hmm. And also the province knew the very same day that the city knew that this leak had happened and was happening, and the province really didn't disclose. So I moved a bill called the Coos Paradise Water Accountability Act that essentially will require not only the polluter to which is happening now, the polluter has to let the Ministry of Environment know that a spill has happened. But this will also put the onus on the province to disclose to the community, like a meaningful disclosure, not a notice posted inside of an engine room, which is what happened in Hamilton. And why that's important is because when people know what's in their water, when people are informed, when communities are informed, they're in a better position to act, in a better position to advocate for a good for our environment and for making sure that we protect this for years to come.
Well, this leads into the next question I had from a viewer. They sent me this question via email earlier this week, asking about the proposed sewage line that might dump waste from portions of York Region right into our lake. And I thought maybe it was going into Lake Ontario, but then I hear that it's going into Lake Simcoe. I don't know, Claire or Sandy, do you have an update on what's going on with that proposed sewage line?
So what we're talking about is called the Upper York Sewage System. This is a proposal that has gone through an environmental assessment, and York Region is now saying, we want the sewage to go into Lake Simcoe because we've done the EA, the environmental assessment, we've paid for it, and we have the development that needs to be serviced. So it's become a bit of a crisis now because, not for me, it's not a problem for me that development is delayed, but for the municipal world and for developers who pressure them, they want this huge capacity. And so I'm a little concerned with, a government that really likes to do, the whole COVID recovery plan, as far as I can tell, is to just build. So they're really into building. They want to build. They want to build everywhere. So that worries me because I think that it's possible that the decision about whether the sewage goes to Lake Ontario or Lake Simcoe could be made from a place of, well, how do we accommodate all the growth? And that's not okay. The decision is supposed to be made from the perspective of the health of the receiving waters. I don't want this sewage line really to go through the Oak Ridges Moraine either. And the people down there don't want it to go there either. And at the same time, the volume of Lake Simcoe is less than 1% of the volume of Lake Ontario. Mm-hmm. So as to the decision, it has not been made. And what I do know is that there was a meeting of affected ministries and municipalities, probably November or December of last year. People who participated in that meeting had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's not cool either. These are public dollars. These are public waterways that are going to be affected. The public has a right to know on what basis these decisions are being made and with what information. So the Georgina Island First Nation has opposed it. So has the town of Georgina, which has a significant amount of Lake Simcoe shoreline on the southeast part of the lake in York Region. But York Region is saying that we do want this to go into Lake Simcoe.
We've heard flip-flopping on this over the last long while. When is a decision going to be made on this? I don't know if Sandy has any insights into this.
No, not particularly, because the government does everything. Is not transparent about the things that we're doing, and really, from what the little that I understand, because it is completely not transparent. I mean, there was, as was described, you know, the idea that they were going to consider a different option, but it's not clear what that option would be, and it's not clear whether this different option should require a new environmental assessment. I mean, those are really, really important questions. And if it also requires expropriation of land, or, you know, or rezoning, under what authority is this going to happen? And sadly, we see a minister, you know, I mean, this should actually be something that the Minister of Environment, Minister Urick, should be responding to. But what we're also seeing is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing issuing the MZOs like all over the place. And so maybe that's that under that authority, they will be able to, you know, change the plan without an EA, and rezone property.
Yeah.
So
that's what we're hearing, is that it would require legislation, probably for what appears to be. I mean, what I'm seeing is the government has a plan to do something, and then they create legislation in order to make it legal for them to do that. There are a lot of examples of that, unfortunately, and I think this could be another one. Yeah, but to your point, it's the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing now who apparently is going to make the decision about the sewage system. It should be the MOE. That is what they regulate. So there are a lot of concerns about the process. But if you wouldn't mind, I would like to just take a minute to talk about what the impact would be and some details around that, because it is a black box and we're not communicating that much about it, probably partly because there's just a lot to do and communicate, and also because Georgina Island First Nation has really taken the lead on opposing this, and we really don't want to step on their toes. They're one of our member groups. We've said we'll support you, but they're really they're doing this in their own way because they have their own relationship with government. So the problem with the Upper York sewage system, one, is that it's going to service a whole lot of growth that is, I mean, a lot of it's already approved. There are overland impacts as well as sewage impacts, which is what we were just talking about with stormwater impacts. That all contains phosphorus. So this plant is touted as being, you know, the most advanced. I'm not denying the science around how fantastic this plant would be, but we just talked about a leak in Cootes Paradise. So there's always that problem. Lake Simcoe is not suddenly going to get any bigger and healthier if there's a sewage leak. I mean, this is a lake that probably can't handle that. Mm-hmm. Also, best case scenario is that it adds to what I've read is 292 kilograms of phosphorus a year into the watershed. We are trying to bring phosphorus loads down by about half right now, and really struggling to do that, especially as climate change interactions make that harder. So why we would allow any more sewage to come into the lake is a mystery to me. And in fact, the Lake Simcoe Protection Act says you aren't allowed to put new sewage treatment plants into the lake unless they are replacing an old one. And in this case, it's the Holland Landing Sewage Lagoon. It's not really a sewage system. It's basically a holding pond. And they named it a sewage system so that they would be able to replace it with the Upper York sewage system. So there's a whole lot about this that is worrying. Final point is that the claim is that the phosphorus load would be offset by, well, they're offsets. Okay, so these are phosphorus offsets. So that means you're going to remove phosphorus somewhere else. It is unclear that whether many of those offsets really work, and whether they are as enduring as just capping sewage treatment plant loads. So if, for example, you revitalize a stream bed and you reduce the erosion, which then reduces the amount of dirt that goes into the stream and creates phosphorus pollution in the lake, great. There are multiple benefits for doing that, but whether that is a long-term offset, whether it will last, we don't know. I mean, are we going to monitor every single restoration project that's done and measure whether it is still achieving the same phosphorus reductions that the scientists planned? So, I mean, you can create a really complicated system and it might look good on paper, but if you don't have the monitoring and the science behind it, it's not something that I can support.
Claire, sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I was just going to say, and that is why, I mean, these things happening behind closed doors without public input is what's so disturbing about this government. I mean, because it shouldn't be this way. When they're talking about something that is this significant, that could have such a significant impact on Lake Simcoe and the environment, this needs to be public. And I'll just say, from our perspective, as the official opposition, we ask questions. MPP Jennifer French has questions on the order paper, trying to get to the bottom of what's going on with the change in plan for this sewage treatment plant, and and in fact also, something of this nature is probably something that should be posted on the Environmental Bill of Rights. So there's a comment period, so people have the right to comment on it. So what this government has been doing through issuing MZOs that completely kneecap good planning process and doing things behind closed doors without public input is unfortunately what a track record that we've seen from the very day one of this government. It's something that they don't seem to have any qualms about continuing to do. And I would say, for people that are concerned about Lake Simcoe and also your Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, which is like gold standard Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, people need to be aware that this is a government that will not hesitate to blow up that plan, to issue MZOs, even if it is clearly seen to be destructive on the local environment.
Yeah,
I
would
hope
agree.
you're wrong.
I hope you're wrong too.
I hope you're wrong.
I do too.
But I mean, there is very little evidence so far that decisions are being made really with the environment as the primary consideration. So I do share your concern. I guess I hope that politics trumps the day here, because all the MPPs around the lake are conservative, and most of them campaigned on protecting Lake Simcoe. And when our organization and Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition and Environmental Defense and Ontario Nature and all the citizens and 35 citizen groups that supported us got the Lake Simcoe Protection Act, it was unanimous. It was unanimous at Queen's Park. So, it's one thing to say, yay, I support it. And then it's another thing when you're in charge to say, we're going to maintain it and we're going to implement it. And I sure hope that that's what this government does.
Well, Claire, that leads into our next question, because we are in the middle of or just wrapping up a consultation period for the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. And that plan is going to be put under review by the Ford government. And the concerns out in public seem to be that the Conservatives are going to weaken the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. Do either of you, maybe Claire, have any ideas on how they would weaken the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan? And if that were to happen, what would that mean for our lake?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stick with, I hope that they don't. And I think that there are a lot of reasons for them not to. And that's the outcome I want. Okay.
Yep.
But there are many ways that they could weaken the legislation. So it's an act that's enabling legislation, and it enabled the creation of the plan. Plan has got 118 policies in it that are implemented by provincial and municipal governments and by NGOs and First Nations and Ducks Unlimited and, you name it. There are policies, the ones that I would most likely expect the government of Ontario of today, that has done everything they can to facilitate development everywhere. I would worry that they would gut the special rules that we have at Lake Simcoe for construction and development. Yep. We have some really good policies that are leading edge in Ontario that help control phosphorus runoff and make developers pay for that pollution if they can't manage it and cut it down on site. And then that money is going into other needed restoration projects like stormwater management, which is now just like a desperate empty bucket. There's so much that needs to be done. So I hope they don't do that, but that it would be consistent with what we've seen so far, that they would weaken that. The other thing I think that is a top concern for me is the Upper York sewage system and allowing new sewage treatment plants around the lake. Because the Lake Simcoe Protection Act and Plan are a Ministry of because they're run by the Ministry of the Environment. It's been a long week. Because they're run by the MOECP, Ministry of the Environment, it's not a land use plan. They don't regulate land use. So capping sewage and phosphorus effluents at a sewage treatment plant is a way to actually control growth and sprawl. And so I'm quite worried
that those caps.
Yeah, if they made it easier to pollute basically out of a sewage treatment plant, then that would allow more growth and sprawl. And like I said, I don't see that we have a lot of offsets. There's some options that are good, but there aren't enough offsets to accommodate the scale of growth that we see coming down the line, which is like doubling by 2041 or 2051.
Yeah. Hey, Sandy, over and over again, I think you've brought this up, but Claire, you've brought this up too. The Ford government has shown little regard for protecting our environment. The Duffins Creek wetland is being one recent, very glaring example. Sandy, what are your concerns over the handling of the environment by the Ford government overall, not just in Lake Simcoe or Cootes Paradise, but just in general?
I mean, the list is so long. I mean, the very first thing that they did when they came to power was they canceled the cap and trade, which was forfeiting billions and billions of revenue. They fought, the federal government in court over it. They've just lost. They canceled the green energy contracts, cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And so right off the bat, like right off the hop, they were prepared to gut environmental protections. We saw, I mean, do we remember now their stickers that they were so angry about the cap and trade at the federal level that they wanted to show their anger by having forced people to put stickers on gas.
I had a glove compartment full of those, by the way.
No.
Sam, I just ripped them off whenever someone was not looking. I was so infuriated. I'm like, you can't use taxpayer dollars to spread propaganda that's ruining the world.
Today, Doug Ford said it was voluntary.
I think you meant to say, Claire, you didn't rip them off. They fell off because they didn't stick, and you just picked them up off the ground.
Yeah, there was very bad glue.
And so then we fast forward to cuts. I mean, continual cuts to programs in the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. They cut the 10 million tree planting program. I mean, and so the budget is cut and then continues to be cut. So, for example, I'll get back to that, but where is the budget to implement the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan? You've got it. It would have been nice to see in this budget the actual money, dollars associated with the implementation of that excellent plan. Then now we saw the budget in December. Rather than budget was supposed to be about COVID, but buried in there was what the infamous Schedule 6, which basically took away conservation authorities' rights to intervene, with development. I mean, it basically took away their right not only to have standing at tribunals, but it also put legislation that would allow the government to force conservation authorities to issue permits even if they didn't want to. I mean, now we see a government that issues MZOs all over the place, which are ministers' zoning orders. And for people that don't know what this means, what that means is if there's planning rules, the provincial policy statement that says, you can't build on a protected wetland, for example, or if you live in a city, everyone lives in cities or municipalities that have bylaws and they have official plans that people have to adhere to because they're there for a reason, so that we have good planning and good healthy planning for building and development for everyone. These ministerial zoning orders come in and they just say those rules don't apply. I say, as a minister, you can build on a wetland in Duffins Creek is what they did there. So they said it's a protected wetland. The rules say, oh, we can't do it, but I'm the minister and this developer wants to build a warehouse for Amazon. So I'm going to say, to hell with all those other rules. I had this MZO. And then what then happened was environmental groups decided to take the government to court to say that what you have just done was illegal. That MZO is illegal because it doesn't follow provincial planning rules. And the government, it was the document that became public, got legal advice. And the legal advice said, you're likely to lose that lawsuit because your MZO was in fact illegal. So now what does the government do? They know they're going to lose the lawsuit. There's a bill in front of the House that's about broadband, nothing to do with the environment. It's about broadband. So this government buries in this bill, it's a broadband bill, I forget the number, it's before the House right now. They bury in this a schedule, it's Schedule 3, and this schedule literally changes the laws of the province of Ontario. It says MZOs that were issued retroactively, so that illegal MZO that the minister issued, we're going to make that legal. And we're going to make any other MZOs that he issues in the future that violate wetland protection, all kinds of protections, we're going to make that legal. So this government from day one has done nothing but try to strip away all the environmental protections that the people of Ontario have, including they don't respect the Environmental Bill of Rights, which is a Bill of Rights that every Ontarian is entitled to. So this is a government that, you know, is they're focused on development at any cost. And what has happened is maybe they don't actually hate the environment as much as it seems, but what they do is they love development. And the environment just happens to be in the way. So they will do anything they can to build development. And there's a clear connection between the MZOs that they're issuing and donors and contributors to the PC party. You know, there's just a connection. People can decide whether that has any influence on it. But everything they have done is about development. Doesn't matter what the impact will be on the environment today or for future generations. They don't
Sandy,
care.
are there any protections left for our environment in your mind?
I don't think so. You know, I think there's none. So, you know, if a minister has been given this extraordinary power to be able to issue, you know, permits to build anywhere, and that's legal, and that this is a government that also has forced the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority to issue a building permit under duress, and under duress is a legal term, means that they were forced to do something that they otherwise wouldn't have. And this government doesn't follow or respect the Environmental Bill of Rights. I just wrote to the Auditor General about another bill that they changed, and they didn't post it on the Environmental Bill of Rights, and she agreed that this was, that they had, you know, they also violated their obligation to do that. It's hard to know what's left. I mean,
it's quite stunning. I mean, it's a long list. So I have one thing to add that I think is really critical. One of the very first things that they did was they got rid of Diane Sachs.
Oh, I forgot.
Is still a fierce champion for the environment.
You spoke here many times.
She followed Gord Miller, who was also a fantastic environmental commissioner of Ontario. And actually, he played very well in all of the sandboxes, Liberal, Conservative, and actually their terms were staggered so that was kind of intentional. They didn't like having a boss of the environment and someone who was had some distance from
independent. They are called independent officers of the House,
right?
And they're important. And you're right. I forgot about Diane Sachs. They got rid of the environmental commissioner. They got rid of the French language commissioner. They got rid of the child and youth advocate. So they got rid of all the independent officers of the House, except for the financial accountability officer, because you're 100% correct. They don't want to be told anything. They don't want to be held accountable by an independent body that reports to the House, not to the government.
Yeah, and just so that it's clear that it's not just us, you know, the Auditor General really did release a scathing report about the government of Ontario right now and what they're doing to the environment, even though it is actually not as independent as the environmental commissioner used to be. So I think that does tell you something about how extreme this is. I just wanted to add one other thing, which I think is that, you know, I think a lot of, like, I've spent a lot of time in Innisfil. I've lived in Innisfil. And one of the things I realized living there is that there are lots of people who live in the suburbs and have always lived in the suburbs and probably will always. And, you know, it's not that those people are bad, right? This is the form of development that makes the most money for developers. So that's their agenda, and they push it. And people like having a yard. But the thing is that style of development is really unsustainable at the level that we're seeing it in Ontario, and that's why a lot of environmental groups are concerned about that. And I think it's important that people realize that you know, it's not an attack on anybody that lives in the suburbs. It's like pointing out that this urban form is not healthy for people because you have to drive so much to get everywhere. It actually physically dislocates a lot of people from their families and their social networks of support. It spreads the cost of servicing a community over a much bigger area, which ultimately means there's less money at the municipal level for stuff like libraries and taking care of people in need. So, there are decisions that are made that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about because it may be just something they're so used to. But I think we really do need to be open to embracing a different kind of urban form in order to embrace sustainability in the province of Ontario and not just see that really, single family homes, tracts of single family homes and townhouses on the edge are the only option.
Hey, Claire, I'm going to follow up with you on that question. But before we get too far ahead, I just wanted to backtrack a moment and ask Sandy a question about something I was reading. And I just wanted clarification from Sandy. Hey, Sandy, if the NDP forms a government after the next election, which is next June in 2022, what does that mean, or does it have any implications at all for projects that have these permits that conservation authorities were forced to give?
Yeah, so we've been really clear with all of these projects. The Highway 413, we would cancel that project right away. If conservation authorities have been forced to issue permits under duress, we would rescind those at the request of the conservation authority. So, we would try as much as possible to undo the damage that's been done by this government, but it's a lot. There's a lot going on, and so we would certainly restore the conservation authorities' authority, their ability to weigh in that they've lost under Schedule 6. We would restore that as well, because Claire just talked about where people want to live and how people want to live, and I think that even if people live in urban or suburban settings, they still want green space. They still want to protect their environment. They want to go to parks. They still want rivers and streams. And I think the other part of all this that we need to talk about is loss of agricultural land. I mean, that's a really important thing that people need to understand as well. And so, yet again, I'm saying the same thing again. There's a reason why we have planning laws, and there's a reason why we want to make it transparent, and we want to have input from everyone, including conservation authorities and local municipalities. Because people, we want to maximize what's best for everyone, including the environment. And that only happens when you respect planning laws and you respect the people of Ontario by including them in that process.
Sandy and Claire, both of you, you might be aware of this, but I think the projections are for Barrie, Innisfil, so that's South Barrie and all of Innisfil. The population numbers by 2030 are going to be around 250,000 people. So that's not too far away. That's part of our planning orders. How do we accommodate that growth, but also protect our lake, our forests, our farmlands, and our wetlands?
I think in Lake Simcoe, we need to start by identifying what we value, which is a lot of the list of what MPP Shaw just said, right? So we need to identify what farmland is going to be protected forever. We could protect them stronger because they're really suffering as a result of sprawl. And we need to identify what natural systems we want to keep. So, Lake Simcoe Protection Plan has a target of 40% high quality natural cover. We could definitely reach that, but it needs to be in a system, and it needs to be a deliberate choice, and there needs to be land use planning policies that will guarantee that those lands are actually off limits. Think about all the red tape you could get rid of if you didn't have people applying for development permits and land that they shouldn't be developing. It's actually, I've been banging my head against the wall for that for like 10 years. Why don't we just map all this? But I think that once you've identified the land that you need to set aside for sustainability, air, water, space, enjoyment, farming, nature, all the other critters that live on this earth, this is how I think you should do it, because then you identify how much land you have, and then you say, well, what do we want to do? And you make it an open democratic process. That's what an official plan is for.
Right.
That's why people are invited to participate in official plans, is you come up with a plan. And then you can say, look, you could have 10 towers, and you could have, 100 acres of park space, or you could have kind of more like Paris, or Markham is trying to do this, I think, quite effectively, and like the Annex in Toronto. You can have mid-level buildings, and they accommodate a lot of people that are not the single-family home people. Not everybody has like two kids and a dog, right? So I think that there's a big need to provide cradle-to-grave housing in communities, in existing communities. So that means don't just build a bunch of towers around the GO train station in Newsville, the orbit, and call that progressive planning. You build in the places that are already serviced, you build in existing communities, and you make them better by bringing a bit more density and more services so that people can use transit. Because there's enough density and because there are enough services. I mean, that's smart growth. That's good planning. That's what all the planners think they want to do when they leave planning school.
Sandy, is that what you're hearing around other areas of Southern Ontario? How to accommodate growth that's going to happen? We know that population is growing here, but also to protect our green spaces, our forests, our wetlands, and our lakes.
Yeah, I think really, cities are a little different maybe than rural and urban areas, but what they all have in common is the fact that good planning will result in good development. And I think what people all will have in common is that they don't want to live somewhere where there isn't the services like the libraries and the hospitals and the fire departments, because if there's just development that happens, the costs are borne by municipalities. I think that's an important consideration for people. So,
you want to explain how that works then?
Yeah. So when development comes in, I mean, there's certain costs for developers, but what they don't have to bear the cost of, generally, they don't have to bear the cost of wastewater and the sewage. They don't have to bear the cost of that, roads, sidewalks. They don't have to bear the cost of providing additional service. If there's transit that goes out there, buses, they don't have to pay for any of that. So they can come in, they can get their permit to build. They do make some contributions, absolutely, to the municipal tax base, but the legacy costs that go on and on and on are borne by the municipalities and are borne by taxpayers. I mean, I just want to howl that Doug Ford keeps saying, "Oh, we're going to put money in the pockets of the little guy." Well, he's not. I mean, what they're going to do is put the money in the pockets of big guys and leave the cost to people that perhaps seniors that have owned their home for the last 40 years, and they're going to see these increasing municipal tax rates because of unplanned development. And I keep going back to these ministerial zoning orders, or MZOs. I mean, even if a municipality says we don't want this development because we can't sustain it, or it's not sustainable, or it doesn't conform with our planning policies, the province doesn't care. They go ahead with the MZOs anyway. And so at the end of the day, the province or Doug Ford is not going to help you with your property tax. It's your municipality that's going to be stuck with that problem.
Have we seen that happen elsewhere in the province, where the MZO has overridden a municipality in terms of building a subdivision or something?
Well,
in Aurora, the province built on provincial land in Aurora. The mayor Maracas, Tom Maracas from Aurora, was really outspoken.
Yeah, I saw a letter by him, I think, yesterday.
What?
I think I saw a letter by him on Twitter yesterday.
Yeah, he's one of the only politicians who I've seen that's been really quite outspoken against MZOs. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in Aurora, they're at the top of the Oak Ridges Moraine, and they're talking about lands that have been identified. I mean, the Oak Ridges Moraine was protected by a conservative government. It's not like it's impossible for conservatives to be conservatives. So Oak Ridges Moraine was protected largely because it is a source of drinking water, and it filters contaminants out of the water as it percolates down through the gravel and the sand that makes up the Oak Ridges Moraine. And so it's important that the top of the moraine is not covered in concrete, otherwise that won't happen. So, there's a reason why the planning is the way it is. And so I think people in Aurora, and certainly the mayor was quite articulate on that point, that they don't want this, and it overrides their official plan. And the province's response was, well, this is provincial land. I'm actually... Yeah, maybe you have other examples, but I just wanted to throw it. There was just on MZOs. The Conservation Authority has been forced to issue a permit to destroy forests, maybe wetlands. I'm not totally sure, to accommodate an MZO in Oromadante, which is a racetrack.
I saw that too.
Yeah. And so that letter from that mayor was pretty didn't hold back, pretty to the point. And I mean, essentially the mayor said, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, and so that was, that was an important letter to read. It was a joy to read that letter, to be honest with you. But, we saw in Stratford, there was going to be an MZO issued to allow a glass plant to be built, a Gigny glass plant, and the community organized really well and pushed back. And the municipality, basically said that at first they were okay with it, but then they said they didn't want it because the community was opposed to it. But I think it's what that shows. And what the people were really upset about was, in addition to the environmental impact from this glass plant, they were really annoyed that the process was so undemocratic. And so there's another success story. Duffins Creek is a success story, and having pushed back on that MZO and that warehouse, the Amazon warehouse. Stratford is a success story. So I think it speaks to what I was saying earlier around my Coos Paradise Water Accountability Act, which is if people are informed, people know, and they're able to speak up and stand up, we can have impact. We can win these battles.
I think we've seen examples of that over the last few years under the Doug Ford government, that when people really stand up, that they back down. However, they don't back down fully. They continue to find other ways to try to get their priorities met in terms of developing the green belt.
Yeah, it's a bit
when you're not looking.
Yeah,
it's whack-a-mole. It is whack-a-mole. In Simcoe County, the Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition has been like the slayer of MZOs. They killed one in Simcoe County in Simcoe Forests that was proposed for a waste plant in a forest. I mean,
yes.
Really, is there not a better place than a forest? And then another one that was really incredible, like on the shore of Lake Couchiching, a provincially significant wetland. Ramera Council proposed doing an MZO to finally achieve an ambition of theirs, which is to have commercial tourism in that area. And basically, there were a lot of citizens who were very engaged, as you've been describing, who were just incredulous that this could happen. And they stood up and they got organized and they worked with the Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition. And they basically just countered the lies. Like, Ramera Township was saying, well, we never asked for an MZO. And then the citizens were like, well, here it is in writing. This was a council resolution. So it's not, it takes some organization, but it's not that hard if what you're trying to do is make sure that people are being honest. I think that what I've seen is that the MZOs that are getting slayed are sometimes the smaller players. So I am worried about the Innisfil Orbit MZO, which is a major developer who's behind that.
You said it may not be hard, but it can be very tiring because it's ongoing and it's always popping up, as you said, whack-a-mole everywhere. So it doesn't work one way, they try it another way. And hey, I'm just looking at the clock. We've only got a few more minutes left. It's gone so quickly. But I just wanted to ask Sandy, because this week, or last week, I should say, the NDP released their Green New Democratic Deal. And Sandy, just in 2 minutes, could you highlight maybe some of your favorite portions of the Green New Democratic Deal? And is there any plans to expand the green belt in that Green New Democratic Deal?
It's a mouthful, the Green New Democratic Deal. And honestly, as we launched it, we are so proud of this. It really is the boldest plan out there from either any government at the provincial level right now. We are looking to be net zero by 2050. We have in the plan, we've looked at, not just the environment, but a just jobs transition, plan as well. So it's called the Green New Democratic Deal, but it's also a climate jobs and justice, because I think we know that right now with coming out of the economic crisis that has been the pandemic and the climate crisis that's upon us, there is opportunity there. I mean, in some way, we don't have any choice but to act. And so this plan really looks at ways that we can, make sure that not only are we tackling the climate crisis, but we're doing it in a way that leaves no one behind. So we have a very ambitious retrofit program that will, because that's one of the huge sources of greenhouse gases is from buildings and residential. There's a retrofit program that will, not only allow people to have their homes fitted and save money and capture greenhouse gases, but it also will be a plan that will allow people to get jobs and train in, but essentially it should be a new type of economy, a green economy.
Sandy, how about the expansion of the green belt? Was that mentioned in there?
Absolutely. So we have plans in there to address, expansion of green spaces, green belt. The other thing that I really wanted to get in there before we're finished is that we have, a provincial water strategy. And, I think we can't leave this call or this meeting without addressing the fact that, not everyone in this province has access to clean drinking water. I mean, we see all of the First Nations communities that have been on boil water advisories for years. In the Skandiga, for example, is 25 years of boil water advisory. We have Six Nations here, which is close to Hamilton. They have intermittent access to clean water. While at the same time, Nestle, without permission, is taking water from the aquifers that is on unceded land for Six Nations. So we absolutely will have a plan for green space, green belt, and a provincial water strategy, which I think is something that is between the Coots Paradise, what happened there, what people are planning to do with sewage in our Great Lakes, into Lake Simcoe. We need a plan, and we need it to be ambitious, and we need to take all of this very seriously. And that includes making sure that no one is left behind. And this plan, not only improves the economy, but also make sure in the environment, but it makes sure that individuals have equal access and ability to participate in this renewal.
Sandy, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on tonight. I know you're really busy, and you were a pleasure to have on here. It's so informative. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I learned a lot about Lake Simcoe. Believe me, it's something that I will pay attention to when I'm in the legislature. And if I have any opportunity to ask a question of your MPP or MPPs about what the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan is going to look like, I will be there for you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Claire, thank you for coming on tonight. I know you're also extremely busy, and we appreciate all of your information and knowledge, and you've got such a long, rich relationship with the lake, and you know exactly what's going on up here. So many thanks for coming on and joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, Pekka, for really being you're really a connector in the community, and I really appreciate the way you're able to bring people, and I mean, you're a teacher. The poster behind you is a gift from our organization to teachers like you that helped deliver an environmental education program as volunteers. It was actually built by volunteers at our end too. To say thanks, to help educate the students. So I just want to say thank you to you for doing your part for Lake Simcoe and for bringing people together.
Well, I appreciate that. Maybe we can have a follow-up in the fall or some other time just to see how things are progressing. And I'd also like to thank Mike Washburn. Mike has been working hard behind the scenes, as he does for all of our town halls. And I know it's a lot of work organizing and preparing and producing the show. So, Mike, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. And for everybody watching tonight, I hope you found it to be informative. And it will be played on Rogers Television. And I will have a video on our NDP website so that you can watch at your viewing pleasure. So, thank you. And I hope everyone has a nice evening. And please reach out if you'd like to connect with either of us. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.